podcast is brought to you by the Association for Coaching, the world's leading international professional body which is advancing coaching in business and society worldwide. I'm Mark Crossfield, your host of this new series, where we introduce you to experts, coaches and thought leaders who share their passion for career coaching. Our aim is to provide a comprehensive and informative resource for career coaches at all stages of their careers, offering valuable insights and practical advice from experienced professionals in the industry. Each week, I meet with a coaching expert and we explore an important aspect of career coaching. Hello and welcome to the very first episode exploring the world of career coaching. In today's conversation, my guest is Gill Frigerio and we're talking all about career coaching. Gill is an associate professor at Warwick University and a leading expert in the field of career studies and coaching. With an extensive background in career development practice and management, including her former role as head of careers at Warwick, Gill leads several programs on career development and coaching studies. These programs cover a range of topics, including coaching psychology, career transitions, and the management of employability. Gill is also a career development practitioner and a coach. So, let's meet Gill. Hi Gill, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks Mark, it's great to be here.
Thank you. And we're going meta today on the subject of career coaching. And I can't think of anyone more suited to this topic. So to start us off, Gill, what is career coaching and why is it important?
Well, I think before I answer that, what I need to say is what I think a career is, because the definition that I work with is a very broad one. So it's about the choices that we make about learning and work as we move through the whole of life. So I'm not just talking about particular types of jobs, quality of jobs, or a particular kind of vertical progression through a traditional structure, but really it encompasses all sorts of life roles. And therefore, career coaching is about helping people to make the decisions that they need to make about learning and work, and getting hold of the information that they need to make those decisions. Yeah, so it's pretty broad. Sometimes there's other terminology that's used like career guidance, career development. I think it's all much of a muchness, really. It just depends on the context, what term people use.
And these decisions you talk about are big decisions, aren't they? So, we spend a lot of our working time at work, don't we? Our waking time at work. So these are big decisions people are taking, aren't they?
Yeah, we can. And in terms of what we want out of the whole of our lives, work plays a really important part in that, when we're doing it and when we're not doing it.
So what drew you into the world of career development and coaching?
Well, I always joke that I'm nosy and bossy, so it was perfect for me. But that's just a joke, because career coaches, like all sorts of coaches, we don't define ourselves by being bossy or, we believe that the people that we're working with are in charge of their own lives. I think the nosy thing, though, is really important, because I was always extremely curious about other people's decisions about work and the work that they did. And after doing some research jobs, I was researching in this field about educational choices, and decided that what I really wanted to do was something that helped people with this. And so I became what was then known as a careers advisor in the University of Warwick, working with students. And I did that for quite a long time and moved into management. And it was during that time working in higher education that the terminology career coaching began to be used quite a lot more in our professional world. And so I explored what that meant. I did a course in coaching and thought it was pretty similar, but somewhat richer in some aspects. And so I've enjoyed kind of bringing career and coaching together.
Yeah, and using that curiosity, like you say. I wonder whether, curiosity is a great skill, isn't it? I wonder what other skills that you think are quite useful for a career coach to have.
That's a really interesting one. I think that you need to be reflective. You need to be able to reflect on your own practice in the moment as well as afterwards, in terms of kind of constant improvement. I think you need to be pretty organised and quite good strategically, because in whatever context you're working, whether you're working for yourself or you're working in an organisation, you're not just doing the one-to-one work with clients. You're facilitating learning in lots of different ways. You're probably doing some group work, but you're there because you're strategically important to the organisation, and so you need to be able to think about where your service is going as well. So it's quite a tall order, I guess.
Yeah, lots of skills to learn. But the organisation one, not many people mention that. But you're right. It's such a key skill, isn't it? Because being able to manage these important conversations and the ongoing work with clients and other clients as well, it's a challenge. So that organisation's vital, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how does career coaching differ from other forms of coaching, such as life coaching or executive coaching, for example?
Well, it's a good question and an interesting one. I guess given the definition I've just offered to you of career, then you might say that there's quite a lot of overlap with those other forms of coaching. So life coaching, a person might be bringing something to do with finance or their work-life balance or something, and to a life coaching situation, and that's going to connect with their career. Executive coaching would be for, it's not a term I'm over fond of really, because who's an executive and who isn't, but it would be career coaching for certain types of people. I think there'll be contexts in which there's quite a clear goal for the coaching around performance, and that might overlap with executive coaching. Whereas in career coaching, I think we're probably looking for the client themselves, the individual we're working with, to define what they want from their career and to set their own goals. So that's just some thoughts, but these things are very murky, aren't they? And it's quite hard to draw really rigid boundaries around different types of coaching.
Yeah. I don't know how helpful it is to have those rigid boundaries anyway.
Quite.
I suppose it's more important about what are the challenges that clients bring to career coaching. I mean, what challenges do you see that clients bring to career coaching? What are the typical ones you see?
Well, I think they form. There's a number of kind of main kind of clusters of challenges. Sometimes it's about not knowing what the options are. So it's about not having information about career opportunities and how to find out about what people could be doing, what's out there. Or I've got this idea about the sorts of skills I want to be using, the sorts of activities. Who's going to pay me to do that? How do I turn that into a kind of job goal? And so there's those information related skills, but I think it's really important to stress there that what we don't do is kind of often is pass on that information. We're usually working with people about how they can find that information for themselves and make sense of it for themselves, because of course having the information is just part of it. People might then have some issues around their own attitudes to risk, to decision making, to fear of uncertainty or change, and we can be working with people around that. And of course sometimes change is forced on people by changes to the external environment or even changes in their own life, and it can be about coming to terms with those changes and being resilient, responding in the most appropriate way, adapting to the world, the reality you find yourself in.
Yeah, and that understanding that they're getting from your conversation at one point in their career, they can use that later on in the career, can't they? Because careers are long. So you're right. It's a discovery conversation. It's about learning about themselves and also what is out there, and that information and that knowledge, that skill, they can use that over and over again, can't they, in the career?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, developing a career is something that we're all doing all the time and we're all learning about all the time. It's an ongoing process for sure.
I've often found that for many clients, their career is closely tied to their sense of self and identity. With this in mind, how can career coaches support clients in exploring this connection, the identity connection, I suppose?
Yeah, interesting question. I think that sometimes it can be helpful to provide a space for people to think about that for themselves and give them a bit of structure, because they might never have thought much about how their biography and the different elements of them as a person have worked together to give them a certain set of options and led them to make a certain set of decisions. So I think that can be can be really important. It's not saying that people need to be pigeonholed, that people from certain sorts of backgrounds are interested in particular things. We have to be open to everyone having as wide a range of options as possible. I think that's really important. But acknowledging how identity might be shaping the person and helping them to reflect on that is really important. And those identity influences might, of course, also interact with things that are around you. So the communities that you're a part of, the social world that you're a part of. So, asking people to reflect on the way that their educational environment or previous workplaces have influenced their ideas of who they are as a person can be really useful too.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, the wider impact on identity, because I sometimes work with teachers, for example, who want to change career, and their identity is often reinforced by their family, by the school, by the community they live in, work in. So identity is a big thing for career changes, isn't it? And if you ignore the identity issue, I think some career coaches can find that some of the changes they're anticipating seeing clients are not necessarily working out as well as they anticipated. And that's partly because the identity hasn't changed, and that can be difficult, can't it?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, teaching's a massive profession, and we're all influenced by teachers in some way or another, even from when we're children, aren't we? So, yeah, I think that's a particularly pertinent example that you give there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what are some of the different approaches, models, and tools that career coaches use to support their clients in their career development?
Well, I guess what I'd say that we do in career coaching is, because we're thinking about the way that careers develop, is primarily we're drawing on a set of theories really that are contextual. There's theories that are about how an individual makes choices, how they learn, what their interests and personality might suggest are good options for them. But there's also theories that look more at those sort of contextual factors, social factors that I've talked about. And I think the really important thing is to be working with those, to be working in ways where you're constantly negotiating that with the people that you're working with, so that they're really clear about what the process is going to look like, and how it's going to feel, what's going to be involved, who's playing what role. So clarifying that, we're not going to be necessarily delivering factual information, but we're going to be helping people to work with information, for example. And I think the tools piece comes a little bit further down the line. We might be inviting people to do some information retrieval, do some research, bring that back, talk about what that means, what they've learnt, what that might mean for them options wise. Or we might be agreeing activities that people can do between sessions. We might use a psychometric instrument, some sort of career assessment instrument. Those are quite common, and sometimes those are done prior to a career coaching session or between career coaching sessions. But I have to say that we're generally going to be reflecting on the process of doing that assessment activity as much as looking at the results of the assessment activity. So it's going to be a kind of a shared process, rather than the career coach says, here you are, you should become an accountant, or something like that. So there's tools like that, and then of course things that lots of other coaches would use. So wheel of life activities, or card sort activities that can be particularly effective when you're helping people, like a teacher, for example, to fillet out all the things that they do all the time that could be done in different jobs, and to identify priorities for things that a working environment would really need to give. Looking at case studies as well, and seeking mentors. So sometimes people have got really fixed ideas about the sort of job that they're looking for, like it has to be school hours, I have to be able to pick up my children. And whilst that's perfectly legitimate thing to want to do, exploring how people who have those sorts of jobs have got into them, and how others might have compromised around that and found other solutions, can be really useful. And a last piece I'd say there is I think we also need to be advocating to employers. So, for example, things like flexible working is an important one, but it could also be around progression opportunities and how employers are recruiting and selecting and so forth. I think there's a piece for career coaches around that too, because we really spend so much time with people and therefore have a real sense of what people are looking for and what the barriers they experience are.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to just ask you about, on the subjects of tools and exercises again, there is some tension, isn't there, between having a set range of exercises that you use on each occasion with clients and also having a wider selection that you can choose from, which is contingent on the client. Can you talk about that sort of that choice of exercise or tool? What considerations do you make when you're thinking about which one to use?
Oh, yeah, as well. It's really important that I think you're selecting any tool. It might even be selecting the next question that you're going to ask, because questions are tools, yeah? That has to be based on your reflection in the moment on what learning that's going to trigger for the person that you're engaged in coaching with. And I think they also have to know that they've got an option to reject the tool. It has to be offered and not imposed. And that means that it's really helpful if you're able to see somebody a number of times, because it gives you an opportunity between sessions to have a bit more considered thought about what your next approach might be, what you might do. But of course, that's not always the option. Now, I spent a lot of time working in university career service where it was relatively uncommon to arrange a follow-up. We often saw people, the longer appointments that we'd do, we'd see people once, and then they could come back if they wanted to, but that might be a little bit further down the line. So there are times when you need to be able to think in the moment and select something. And we all have our favourites. Even then, you're going to be kind of presenting it afresh to that client as terms of how it might be of use to them and why you are inviting them to try something. So yeah, keeping it fresh is really important.
I think, I agree. That freshness is good, isn't it? And the values work that I do with clients, sometimes I do that as an exercise which they take away and do in between the session. Sometimes I do it using value cards on the call. We'd do something in the actual session itself. So I think it's good to have some exercises you think are going to get the job done, whatever that job is whatever session you're working on. But it's also good, I think, to have a little bit of spontaneity to bring in exercises or tools or things you can use to help support the learning in the client. So it's that balance, really, isn't it, between the two things?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the academic side. So obviously your background really does help you in this area. So what research has been done on the effectiveness of career coaching, and how do theoretical frameworks help us to understand the impact and outcomes of career coaching?
Yeah, so I do spend quite a lot of my time thinking about and working on this sort of scholarly area, particularly with the teaching that we do in our courses. And I think there's lots of different outcomes we might be looking for. Yeah. So, and measuring it is quite difficult, because we could be looking at a sort of what the coachee has to say about whether they enjoyed the coaching, the satisfaction that they have with their coaching, what their view is of the effectiveness of the coaching. Or we might be looking at a particular set of outcomes. So, we might have a pool of people being redeployed. How many of them have gone on to a particular job? And both of those, they're quite different, but they're both problematic, aren't they? Because, well, for all sorts of obvious reasons, really. But, we might not know yet whether coaching has been effective. It depends when you're asking. There have been a number of more complicated sort of meta studies that have looked at different outcomes and triangulated those, and also compared coaching with other forms of career development interventions like courses or online programs. And funnily enough, they usually find that spending time one-to-one with someone, it's more resource intensive, isn't it? It's also more likely to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of the theory side Well, I said a bit before about the types of theories. There's also theories about the kind of process that you might use. Are you using something in the same way as other forms of coaching? Are you using something that's relatively goal directed, goal oriented, or solution focused? Or are you taking a more what we might call a more constructivist approach, where you're really looking at how the person makes meaning? And that tends to take longer and be more reflective, therefore more resource intensive, and feel quite different to the client. So, and there's pros and cons. It just depends on all sorts of things about the situation that you're in, which you might take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I appreciate it is a subjective area, isn't it? And so they've got that challenge. I suppose one metric which is interesting to note is that the take-up of career coaching keeps increasing year on year, doesn't it? So it's becoming more popular. More people are seeking out career coaches. And I suppose that is a positive metric, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yes, I know that a number of career coach organisations are using that net referral metric as a better one than a satisfaction measure. Would you recommend to a friend that they use career coaching in general, or use this particular career coaching service? And I do think that's very useful.
Yeah. I want to ask you now about the market, because we work in a changing world, don't we? And the market is always changing. And the demands of the job market are changing. So I'm very interested in knowing how career coaches can help individuals to adapt to these changing demands in the job market. Have you got any comments on that, how career coaches can do that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we spend quite a lot of time with people on is thinking about how they would interact with prospective employers prior to applying for a particular job, so accessing the hidden job market, building your network, using that as part of your information, but then also how you might make approaches, how you might negotiate, deal with selection activities, whether they be formal ones or less formal ones, and how then you might negotiate terms in which you work with someone. And some of the norms around that have changed, and they can be very sector specific as well, can't they? So helping people to understand the best approach for them to take in their particular context is useful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think actually career coaches generally, in my experience, spend more time probably working with clients to understand themselves better than they do necessarily helping them to understand the market and what's out there. And that can be a challenge because both those things are important, aren't they?
They are, yeah, absolutely, yeah. But of course, the career coach themselves, we have a responsibility to keep up to date and to do our own research. But we can't know everything about everything. So it's a partnership, and if the person that we're coaching is relying on us to, have a particular kind of secret piece of information, then I don't think we're doing our jobs, because we more than likely won't have what they need. So we're often working as part of a kind of wider service or set of resources and it's again this thing I was talking about earlier about helping people to get that information and then to work out what it means, because the same, that 50% of applications are successful can mean, yay, I've got a 50% chance, or I'm 50% likely to get rejected. It depends on people's mindset, doesn't it? How they respond to some of the information that they find.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, mindset is you mentioned mindset there, and that's a whole different topic, isn't it? I do think actually mindset is something which plays a really important role in the success of clients in their career, and certainly in the work with a career coach. Probably haven't got time to talk about that now, but because the mindset really sets the direction of the discussion, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think there's a really fine balance, though, to be sought between acknowledging that people's mindset is a very important part of the piece, but also what we don't want to do is to ignore very real challenges that might be in somebody's way. So sometimes I've heard this referred to as responsibilizing people and making it seem as if it's their fault if they're in a particular situation, and that won't help people's mindset. So sometimes acknowledging barriers and thinking about other ways around them is a more fruitful way of working with somebody than focusing entirely on the mindset that they're bringing to the problem, if you see what I mean.
Well, let's explore that a bit further because I'm interested in that. So, because I often meet clients where, I talk about this possibility mindset, that if it's possible for other people to do something in their career, then it's possible for you to do it. That general link between it being possible for someone to do something. But what would be the alternative approach to that, given what you just said?
We need to avoid any sort of simplistic positive thinking kind of mantras. And if we were working with something about the possibility mindset, then I would want to be exploring what might be getting in the way of that possibility mindset and trying to identify those things and then unpick each of those in turn. So there might be reasons why the person that you're working with looks at somebody else and thinks, well, it's all very well for them. And it might be that they think they're more confident or they're more capable or they're more privileged. It could be, a whole range of different things. But I think we need to name that. We need to look at it and think about, well, what have you done that has enabled you that we could use to build your confidence? Or what have you learned from previous barriers that you've overcome? That's quite a useful one around when, you think, oh, it's all right for them. They went to the right sort of school or whatever. Well, if you've outperformed your peers in the school that you went to, then what does that say about you?
Yeah, I like that.
That's my experience of working with students, I guess, gives me that one.
Yeah, I like that. So rather than champion the mindset, then you'd talk to the individual about why they might not have a certain mindset and sort of go below the surface a little bit and have that discussion with them to help them to see things in a different way. So I really like how you answered that.
Thanks.
Okay, so I want to take us into the future now because I'm very interested to know what is going to happen in the future with career coaching, and you might have some thoughts on this. So how do you see the future of career coaching evolving, especially with the increasing role of technology, AI and automation?
Lots of different ways I could answer that. I mean, I think that people will continue to need career coaching. There'll continue to be turbulence within the labour market, and there'll continue to be skills needs, mismatches. People will find that they're needing to retrain and they're needing to look at retraining options in order to reskill themselves for the jobs of the future. It's a bit of a mantra, bit of a kind of cliche, isn't it? But I think first of all, it'll change the way we're doing career coaching. So 10 years ago, it was mostly done face to face, and now here we are all looking at screens, and there's lots of really good aspects to that, and we can leverage that in terms of making it accessible for people. So I feel quite positive about those sorts of uses of technology, and that's great in terms of being able to link people to other sorts of resources as well. As long as people have got access, we have to accept that lots of people's only source of the internet is their phone, and we need to design platforms with that in mind, I guess. And the internet bandwidth and so forth will be limited for some people. And also I haven't really got my head fully around this yet, but with things like AI, we really need to help our clients to understand what that means for the job search process and how they can use that to their advantage. There's no point being in denial about it. It's got ethical challenges, but we need to work through those and work with it because it's not going away, is it? So that's what I'd say. I think that's where I'm at the moment. I guess it's something that we're all going to have to be able to think critically about as it unfolds. And that's where I guess our continuing professional development comes in as practitioners.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder whether with these large language AI models like ChatGPT, that some of these models might replace some of what the career coach can offer. But I think the human support and conversation, I think that'll always be something that's required. So we might see more people seeking career coaching, and part of those people might be using AI, but I still think there'll be quite a big proportion that will be wants to have a conversation with the human being. I think that's my prediction, but as you said, it is very difficult to predict, isn't it?
I came across a really interesting example recently in Norway, where they have a particular set of needs around career development and a particularly challenging geography in parts of Norway. And so they've developed a really good online platform. And what they've got is a combination of self-managed access to resources and effectively a kind of live chat function that just like in commercial context, it starts off AI and then at a particular point refers you into a person by intelligently recognizing that that's what's needed. And then that person, when you are engaging with a person, they can work with you in a really wide range of ways, from a very short interaction through to something that's much more in depth, and they can see the way that the person's using all the information that's at their disposal. So I was very impressed with that in terms of positive uses of technology.
I'm really excited about the idea of what you've just described, because if you think about, an organisation that's got 500 employees that allow those employees to have access to that technology you're referring to, 90% of those employees may well get all the answers they need from the technology. But that's still creating conversations, the others that go on to speak to a career coach, those probably are new conversations that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So there could be an opportunity here for career coaches, couldn't there?
For sure, yeah. And of course, those people that self-helped, they're also having career conversations all the time with the people around them, their friends, their family, their colleagues. So it's a bit of a kind of virtuous circle, if you like, of career learning.
Yeah, great. And we're just going to come on to the last question, actually, but it's good that we're ending the conversation in a very positive frame of mind. So the last question is a question that I ask all my guests is, what advice would you give to career coaches to help them deliver consistent results for their clients?
Work out what result the client wants with the client, and don't be afraid to challenge clients, I think, to specialise, to refer. I think we all need a network of career coaches that we work with, and we might need to specialise in a particular area of the job market or a particular type of job seeker, and be able to feel okay about referring people to other sources of support if we're not the person that can help them. And I think those networks through professional bodies and other sorts of clusters that we have that enable people to get together are really important for that professional development thing that I was talking about earlier, and reflective practice. And it's enabling us to have those conversations with one another, that not just for the good of it, but for it passes the so what test. It helps you to think, well, this is what I'm going to do differently as a result of this conversation. So I think keeping ourselves up to date, making sure that we're working safely and ethically, all those things really important for consistent results.
Thanks, Gill, and thanks for sharing your expertise with us today. It's been a great start to our career coaching series, and you've set up the conversation brilliantly. If listeners want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me on the University of Warwick's website. I'm based in the Centre for Lifelong Learning. They can find me on Twitter, but I might be mostly talking about football. So, yeah, lots of different ways to connect, and I'm really keen to, it'd be lovely to hear what people have thought, if they thought anything about the sorts of ideas we've discussed. I'm always up for connecting.
Yeah, feedback's good, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so in summary today, we've discussed the important role of career coaching in helping individuals find fulfilling work, navigate career transitions, and improve job performance. We've also explored the unique differences between career coaching and other forms of coaching, along with the common challenges and approaches that coaches use to address them. Additionally, we examine the effectiveness of career coaching and the theoretical frameworks that inform it. Gill also helps us to gaze into the future, and as career coaches help us to better prepare for what's next. Once again, thank you, Gill Frigerio, for sharing your sights with us today.
Thanks, Mark. It's been really good fun. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another podcast by the Association for Coaching. For 20 years, our purpose has been to inspire and champion coaching excellence, advancing the coaching profession, and make a sustainable difference to individuals, organisations, and society. To find out more about the AC and our member benefits, follow us on LinkedIn or explore our webpage at associationforcoaching.com. There you can keep up to date with our latest podcast episodes, enjoy the wealth of digital learning offerings, and gain insight from our Coaching Perspectives magazine.